Hello, and welcome to Moondream Press. My name is Michael H. Hansen, and I am the managing editor of Copper Dog Publishing. And Moondream Press is one of our three imprints, and it deals specifically with science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And I am here to introduce you to the spin off series to the Maauro Chronicles, or rather the continuation of it. And it is known as Maauro Seachanges, and I'm here to talk about the first book in the Maauro Cycles series. And of course, just like the Maauro Chronicles, it is written by author Edward F. McEwen. Now, there's a lot of stuff to cover here, and I think what I'm going to be telling you isn't so much spoilers as a little backstory. A lot of years have passed since this book was published, When Fighting Monsters. Maauro was actually able to create a flesh and blood body for herself and was a flesh and blood human being for 60 years. Now, the story, Legacies, takes place many years beyond that. Rick Trigart lived to be well over 100 years. He and Maauro had a wonderful life together. No more adventures, just being able to settle down and just have a wonderful life. Even though she became a flesh and blood woman, they unfortunately never had children. This is all stuff that's kind of like backstory and merely referenced. Nothing of a spoiler because it all takes place before this book starts. You could say there's a big backstory between the end of the Maauro Chronicles and the beginning of Maauro Seachanges. And I just want to give you a little bit of that to fill it in. And they had a wonderful life together, and finally, Rick passed away after just an extremely long life and being in love with Maauro. And then her body died off, and she was able to transfer consciousness back into her superior android body and, figuratively buried herself. Just her heart was completely broken. Even though she had a long time with Rick, still it was just a tragedy when he passed away on her. And that's where this begins, with the resurrection of Maauro, resurrected into a different galaxy. The Confederation has started falling apart like the latter days of ancient Rome. And there's still things going on, and she doesn't really want to be a part of the world anymore. That's why she buried herself. But against her will, she finds herself found. And I'll just read a little blurb off the back here to add a little bit more to that. Maauro has played many roles in the 50 millennia of her existence. Android war machine, friend and lover. Now she lies buried in grief from a role she never wanted, having outlived her friends and husband. But a sea change is coming in the most unlikely form. A fleeing teenage Thieves Guild trainee, Dasa Falcayan, granddaughter of Dusko, who was a character all throughout the Maauro Chronicles. But a sea change is coming on. A fleeing teenage Thieves Guild trainee, Dasa Falcayan, granddaughter of Dusko. Maauro reawakens to engage in new adventures, but bearing the legacy of all that has come before. I read it. I loved it. I'm just afraid about, spilling too many spoilers on you. I highly recommend it. I suppose there is a question that some of you might want to know, which is, do I have to read the Maauro Chronicles before I read this, the beginning of another 5-book series? And it's tough for me to say because I did read the Maauro Chronicles, but I like to think this works as a good standalone book in itself, setting off another 5-book series. So no, you don't have to read the Maauro Chronicles before you read this. I think, you'd like to. A lot of series are like that. But this takes place far enough after the last book of the Maauro Chronicles that I think you could read Maauro Cychanges on your own. And I'm saying this with a bit of inside knowledge. I've actually read the next 2 books, which have not been published yet. They're still being edited, and they're fantastic. This kicks off a brand new series in the just amazing life of this fantastic science fiction creation, Maauro, the android created well over 50,000 years before the stories take place by an alien race. It's just wonderful science fiction. As I mentioned before in my videos for Moral Chronicles, even though that some of the covers had anime seeming, imagery. These are not for children. They're not for preteens. It's adult science fiction, space opera, action adventure, and I give it the massive thumbs up. I think you're going to enjoy the living heck out of this. So, another series with this wonderful character, Legacies by Edward F. McEwen. Thank you.